Obviously, the most famous example of that is Frederick Douglass, who wrote a famous autobiography of his life as a slave. But there were many others as well by people not as famous as Frederick Douglass, and this is just one of the many. And if you read online, there's some articles where let me say this. Back in the 60s, people began to question a lot of long-held historical ideas, and some scholars questioned the accuracy of the book, saying that, well, first of all, Northup didn't actually write it himself. He was literate, of course. He knew how to read and write, but he dictated it to a white person who wrote down the actual narrative. And the question is, did the person who wrote it down, I forget his name off the top of my head, but did he maybe make some changes to make it fit into what he thought a slave narrative should look like? Did he manipulate it to make it more heart-wrenching, to try to make people more sympathetic towards the slaves? Because the people who wrote these had an agenda. It wasn't just, oh, well, here's my story. Hope you find it interesting. But the people who wrote these stories down were abolitionists for the most part, and their job was to try to get more and more of the North fired up about slavery, fired up in terms of being opposed to it. Because, in the early, we could go all the way back to Jamestown, and I won't do that. But, I mean, if we go back to the early 1800s, late 1700s, in the late 1700s when the Republic was founded, most Northerners didn't really care about slavery. Most of them had never even seen a slave or a black person. A lot of people in the North grew up, lived their entire life, and died without ever really having any personal contact with slavery. But the abolitionists who really got going in the 1830s when 1831, William Garrison founded the newspaper, The Liberator, and the movement began to pick up a lot of steam after that.